Yep.
Would be great. All right. So today, take you through just as we normally do, a quick refresh on the module workshop, which was building a powerful brand. So we're going to go through what is a brand, the importance of building a powerful brand, how to build a powerful brand, key elements and components, and why it's important. And then we'll sort of check in around the um, to dos from the workshop around mission and your values. And then if there are any other issues you want to discuss, we'll run through that as well. So um, I'll hand over to, I'm going to drive, but I'm going to hand over to Martin. So, Martin, this should come up for you. So,
Yes, it does. Thank you very much, Oscar, and nice to see you again, David and Sam, and nice to meet you, Mike. Look, quick recap on what we went through at the workshop. We talk about brand as being all the touch points, all the impressions, and most importantly, it's not what you think about your business or your culture or your assets. It's how other people perceive them because it's your clients, your target market. Because at the end of the day, that's what's important. It's about how they connect, what they see, what they think, how they feel when they look at your brand. What associations do they have? What does that conjure up? And what triggers their sort of neurons? And what do they think and feel and perceive? So yeah, thanks,
sweet.
Oscar.
Thanks.
So we went through this where we're often talking about repetition, building reputation, and you often hear the term brand equity, and it might be a bit of a sort of analogous term, but what it actually means is it's the power of a brand that's built up more than the sum of its parts. The big brands that we all know about and the ones we see day to day, they are so much more than the products or the services that they provide. They've got almost kind of some sort of aura about them, and we see the religious fervor that people will line up for a new product or line up to see a speaker or whatever it is because of the hype that has gone before it and or the equity that they've built up. Um, and before we can get recognition, we need clarity because we need very clear messaging. That's part of that whole sort of definition process of getting very clear about what we deliver and what we're different at and what we're really good at. And that recognition then builds familiarity, which is so often what makes people purchase things or go on a decision. Someone they're familiar with, someone like they feel they've met before or they already know. Um, they feel comfortable, and that familiarity drives reputation. The more that people are familiar, the more that small communities or a network of clients are familiar with you, the more that that will help build your reputation as a business, which of course increases business. At the end of the day, that's what it's about, isn't it? Driving greater revenue, greater profitability, um, and growing.
Yep. And brands have a reputation regardless of whether they like it or not, whether they're deliberate or not, correct, Martin?
Yeah, that's a really important point because sometimes if you're passive about stating who you are and getting really clear on your values and your culture and your vision and your assets and everything that supports you, you still got an identity. It just might be a bit schizophrenic, or it might be a bit of what I call MBD, multiple brand disorder, where you've got all these entities running around in your business. You haven't got one clear voice, one clear tone. And so you'll have a kind of disparate entity or an entity that changes day to day. And you don't want that because that won't build up the familiarity, which is so critical.
All right. Uh,
What are the brand drivers? What creates a great brand? It's clarity. And often people get into business and they're quite clear on their operations and they're quite clear on their production or their service lines. How do we do things? How do we operate? How do we produce? But less so in terms of that intentional approach to their marketing. And first, we often talk about the difference between brand and marketing because it's so often confused. And marketing is the activations, right? The branding is the messaging, it's the why. And I often, I think I might have mentioned, marketing is like asking someone out on a date, but branding is the reason they say yes. And you can get a lot of people go to your website, but unless they're having the right experience, then the conversion's not going to happen. So that's why before we go out and wave the flag too much, it's really important to get that clarity, so that you're more mindful and intentional, and create the visual assets and the messaging that reflect your marketing intent. And again, it comes back to that word that we talk about a lot, which is alignment. So that how you want to be seen and perceived by your marketplace, that your visual assets are in accord with that. There's a lovely congruence. And you get that alignment by creating some of those pillars of the business. So we started a little bit, we did a little bit of workshopping on mission, which is the why, what, and we talked about, we did an exercise on what do you promise to your clients? What do you say you will deliver? And what outcomes do you say that will be achieved, or that they will experience by what you have to offer in your business? The vision is getting clarity as an organization about where we want to go. How do we want to be, what's our kind of goal? What's our achievement? Where would we like to be positioned in our industry? What's our reach? What is something maybe we're known for or renowned for? What's going to be kind of that sense of accomplishment or fulfillment if we were to achieve that vision? That would give us the really warm fuzzies of shit. It was a lot of hard slog, but we got there, and kudos.
Yeah.
To help with that messaging and that alignment, we talk about values. And again, like a lot of things, people can be quite trite about this and spit out a few values or a few words. But when we're talking about that, we're actually talking about getting really gutsy, and what we often talked about, the pillars of your business, or the core attributes, or the values. It goes by different terminologies, but essentially that's those key statements and articulating what is important to us, what are the cornerstones of what we stand for and what we deliver. So hopefully that makes sense. And then the positioning was how you compete, which is the positioning matrix that you went through with Steve and Oscar. The product, your market, your price, etc. Where you sit there, and all those things, well defined, well constructed, provide a really, really powerful platform for helping you build the culture you want, and helping you to create almost like a kind of a tribal allegiance with your clients, where they resonate with those same values. That's what attracts them to you, and therefore they become very strong advocates then, and that's when people refer and help build your business for you.
And Martin, it makes how you market and the channels that you market through, it creates the context. It's creating context for those decisions. So now it narrows down your focus, and we're not uncertain around what we need to say and who we're saying it to. We're so clear around that it doesn't fall out necessarily, but it narrows the focus and makes the decision making much simpler and targeted, rather than being a bit all over the place. Am I correct in saying that?
100%. Before I respond to that one, I'm getting a fair bit of background chatter from someone. Maybe put your mute on. I don't know where it's coming from. I can hear someone talking in the background.
Yeah. Steve, have you got yeah, perfect.
Okay. Yep. We're good. Thanks.
Yep.
Absolutely. One of the first things is sometimes when people get opportunities to market their brand, they're sometimes oh, we need an ad for this, sponsoring this sports team or something. And they've got to start thinking, they think, oh, what are we going to put in the ad? What's it going to look like? What are we going to say? When you've bedded down these elements really clearly through your brand visuals, your type of photography, your visual style guide, your fonts, your typography, your logos, your key statements, your messaging, when that's all solid as a rock, the ads almost just create themselves. It's just a little bit of content around that specific deliverable or offer or information pertaining to that particular ad. But in terms of the layout, the look, the feel, the style, that's all already done. You don't have to think about how you advertise, whether that's a banner or an ad in a journal. Another example would be if you're employing people. The kind of ads that you would write in your employment ads, the kind of interviews you would conduct, and the kind of people that you want to bring on to your business, you've already got a very, very clear insight into who those kind of people need to be. Because when you're looking at them across the table, you're thinking, is this person going to resonate? Do they share these same sort of core values? Can I expect them to be full of integrity or passionate or, whatever your value is?
Yeah.
So that would be another example where you're kind of putting down an infrastructure that gives you an identity that you don't have to keep reinventing or thinking about it too much.
Yep.
And it does all those things, informs the culture you want, which was that, attracts the kind of client you want, clientele you want, and simplifies the marketing. So that's sort of those examples where it does all that.
Sweet.
How you perceived by your target customer, we talked about that at the start of this conversation, and what are the different components or elements that go to make up your voice? And typically, it's images, it's words, and it's brand. So, you read a great book, it's written in a certain style and tone by one author. It's been very thought through. They've probably gone through drafts. It's very intentional, it's very mindful. And that's what you want your information to be. So that if I'm looking at your capability statement, your brochure, your website, your ads on socials, there's a theme that goes through. So that there's a certain brand identity that I'm getting, and I'm back to those early slides. It's being repeated, so that it just keeps reinforcing the message of the brand that you want to present. Brand elements, you can develop style guides, but if people are using those elements, sometimes they still don't follow them. So we talk about brand guardianship or brand management is really important, that you are utilizing and not deviating from, so that you are repeating your same message and your same visuals in the minds of your target customer. So if you don't pick them up the first time around, maybe the second time around, maybe the third time around. There used to be this adage in marketing that, it takes 7 impressions before people kind of, you connect with them. And now with social media, they say it's multiple, more than that.
I heard something about 50.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think there's any scientific number, but it just means with so much information, so much noise, and so much clutter that, sometimes it takes many times and many impressions. And so, you might see something or you hear something, and then you see it on a product, or you just look at it on a website. And then that's the process of automated marketing, where you're following up people and they're getting reminders and they're getting the same message, and maybe it's, tweaked slightly, or it's a slightly different thing, but the style and the theme and the company is always consistent. So that, are my brand elements, are they well defined, and am I using them consistently as a message that, particularly early on, when you're only becoming, say, more conscious on a day-to-day basis of doing this, that it's good to ask yourself and come back to.
Yep.
All about synchronization, that alignment with identity, which is what I talked about before, that congruence, that alignment. So when, it's like anything, when you've got consistency, then those things will line up. And I often see it, I will work with a brand that wants to be sort of elevated up here, but the sort of marketing's down here. And it can be vice versa. Sometimes you can be too sort of, obtuse or too sort of immaculate or thing when you're, a cheaper product and maybe you miss the market there. So sometimes people can brand themselves too high end when they need to be more middle end or lower end or vice versa. And that's just obviously a very basic viewpoint of it. But at the end of the day, it's about do the assets that I promote my business with essentially, are they hitting the market, my target market? The message, the theme, the tone, the voice, the style, the imagery. Are they going to resonate with it? Are they going to look at that and they go, yep, and it's going to make them look further. So consistency and making sure everything's in sync. And of course, often people are very focused externally on the brand, like, what does it look like outside and how do people see it? But it really helps drive culture. I was talking to a client recently and they said that they didn't really actually feel like they needed to rebrand for external purposes. Like the business was going pretty good. A lot of repeat clientele who didn't need them to rebrand. But he said, I did it because I wanted to reinvigorate the team internally. We've got about 20 people on board. And just knew after sort of 10 years of having something that it was time to put that fresh coat of paint on. And we do it in our homes and we do it in other places where we feel like time for a change of colour, or not necessarily, but time for an uplift, time for a makeover, for all the things that it does. And so his whole intention for doing that was to strengthen and galvanize his team internally. So there's a lot that can be said around that branding is not just for the sales and the sales attraction externally, but it's how you can really build strong unity within as well. And it can be so many things, the little messages that go out, the visuals that they see when they walk in every morning to the workplace, the templates that you create that are all consistent. Again, it's like that team that feels really unified. They've got a certain uniform on. Doesn't mean they're always wearing the same clothes, although sometimes that can work nicely too, doesn't it? Staff apparel. But it doesn't have to be that. You could be wearing anything, but that there's a certain uniform in all the assets that are used. Yep. Moving on. And those are all the things that brand alignment does, and why it's important to have brand alignment. Clarity. You don't have to think about the ads. You don't have to think about the content you're about to write. The profile is written. The story is you've created a really strong story through the brand development, and then you're putting it out consistently. That builds trust and credibility. I don't know, some of you have probably heard, certainly Oscar would have, through BNI, things like that, which I think is a really good acronym, VCP. The whole idea of visibility. So you got to turn up, you got to be there, you got to put your name out there, you got to put your business out there. If people don't see it, and it's just sitting on a dusty shelf. You can have the best product, but you're not going to make sales because people don't know about it. So the visibility is pretty primary. When you're
Oh, mate, you're sort of breaking up, mate.
is built, and of course, ECP visibility creates credibility, and of course, that creates the more that people see you, creates profitability, which is what we want. Pretty good acronym. Makes easier, better decision making, provides a stronger emotional connection, and I guess just focusing on that for a moment, we often talk about the fact that people often make decisions, even big business decisions, emotionally, and then they justify it intellectually why they've made that decision. But the classic case is, why did you buy that car? And it's usually because my golf clubs fit nicely in the back and I love the colour and the shape, And yeah, you probably did talk about a few more things, but it's amazing how often it's the simple things that actually, and going back to, I think, even talking with one of the examples in the workshop with David, the architect, where, the detail is not as important as sometimes you think, and you can get lost in the detail. I often do brand workshops where one of my first slides is lost in tech, particularly when I'm talking with innovation companies, because they get so enamored with all the information about their amazing app, and they just talk through people and put people to sleep, or just it's too complex. And that can be things like how you define what you do, your processes, your operations. You might have this amazing, system or engineering or whatever it is, but people generally don't need to know it all. They just need to know what it's going to do for me and what the outcome is. And the outcome is I'm going to be driving around a nice shiny car and going to play golf. And that's the emotional connection. And all that, by the way, builds competitive advantage, because you position yourself in a certain way. And we talk about niche marketing sometimes, or when you've got a certain message and you become known for that. And there are so many examples, whether it's retail brand or service brand, where you become the go-to, that you become the guru for that, or if you want that sort of car, that's the brand you buy, So you kind of create a specific niche in the marketplace, and all that informs the brand experience. So it's the multiplicity of these elements that make up the experience that your customers have with you, and that's a great place to start. Usually, and we often talk about it loosely, but when you really start to get granular about what is the customer, what experience do we want the customer to have, and you deconstruct that down to at the beginning of when they first become aware of you. How did you get to find us? Was it online? Was it whatever? And what's that first impression they have? What's the next follow-up? How do we stay in contact with them while they're in consideration phase? Then they become a client, or they come to see us. What's that appointment look like? What's the aftermath of that appointment? What do we leave with them? How do we follow that up? Etc. And through to obviously when they're an existing client, and how do we keep them close, and how do we create more stronger advocates. Thanks, Oscar.
Yeah, no dramas.
So I kind of started referencing this, I guess, in terms of what is that totality of a brand experience. It's that whole emotional journey, every interaction, every touch point, first impression to final delivery. And we all know about it. You just take restaurants, right? The difference you experience in dining out by that one person and how they greeted you when you arrived, right? The filter, if you get someone who's busy or feeling shitty or moody or just, poor attention or whatever, the filter's already set, and it's not a great dining experience because you've missed that warmth and connection. Um, and we see a lot of it, you know. Often we go overseas and we get really good dining out experience and really good service, and it really shines the torch on how shitty it is sometimes here, you know, and how little effort people put in, right? To just it's your fucking job, you know. Just this, your job is to make people feel good when they come to your establishment. But you know, I guess like everyone, that we you know succumb to tiredness or listlessness or whatever, and we don't give people the experience that they come for, and that would ultimately have them coming back again and again with their friends and colleagues if we just gave them a really good, gave them a little bit more service. I guess that comes down to difference between people working in a business or working for a business and people that own a business, right? And this is the challenge of business owners is to instill that same culture and care into their team, and that comes from building great brands internally and great cultures that people do care and they do feel a part of something bigger than just delivering a product or a service. And if you can get that, then you can create a really great and consistent customer experience.
Yeah. So I just want to touch on that because it sort of segues into our coming module about managing client relationships. So much of what you do through building your brand is then reinforced in the actual touch point physically when they're in your ecosystem of being a client. So um, everything has to align. And I'll say this, and we talk about it in the next one. It doesn't end with final delivery, right? Once they're in the ecosystem, you want to keep them in there and ring fence them. And so managing the relationship doesn't stop with the delivery and the invoice. How do we keep them connected? How do we keep them engaged with us? For some of you, it's um, the distance between purchasing is quite large. You know, for some businesses, it's quite a regular thing. But regardless, is we want them to stay top of mind so that if they need to buy again, they just come straight back to us. And so then we increase the length of the relationship, we increase the spend over the life of the client, and we reduce the cost of the marketing spend along the journey. Once they're in, it's much easier once you've got that trust to keep them connected. So one of the things we will be spending a bit of time on, a lot of time on actually, is what are the extras that we can do once delivery is finished? What are the things we do? And that'll be done in module 7. So I just wanted to touch on that. And that after sales service again forms part of the brand experience. So we'll be talking about that a little bit next in the next module on the 16th, I think it is. And then this is what they do, Martin.
Yeah. So again, get back to clarity, clarify what they stand for so you're not ambiguous. People are very, very clear about what you're delivering, and it makes decision making easy. They are able to say why they choose you. And that's that, which often, again, it's loosely banded about. You know, we talked about, you know, UVPs, unique value propositions, or sometimes USPs, unique, you know, service propositions, PODs, points of difference. It doesn't matter what the acronym is. Essentially, it's what you become known for a little bit different that people differentiate you for. And sometimes people say, oh, that's very hard to do. You know, I run a company, I've got lots of competitors, they deliver and do the same things. You know, I don't have any special app or software or whatever, or system or process that distinguishes me. So therefore, how can I create a point of difference? And it can come down to the operational side or the delivery side or what you leave behind or how you follow up or you know, the fries on top, that you do? What are your fries on top? What's something that you do that makes you obviously has an intrinsic value. It's not just some sort of cheap garnishing. It's something that's real, has a value, and makes you memorable, you know? And it doesn't have to be a big thing. It can be something quite small, but it could be some merch. It could be a message that you leave behind. It could be the way you follow up in 3 days' time to make sure that they had a great service. It could be the delivery mechanism or process, which was so easy, right? It could be the fact that you're buddy just on time all the time, if you're a trade or something, or you're early, or something different that people go. And we know that that's what actually makes people stand out. I often say that, and you can't always just be changing the things flippantly of how you do things, but I often say, make sure you're zagging when everyone else is zigging. And because what happens is when everyone starts to do the same thing, it becomes so overdone that it loses its impact. An example, Australia Post, when the internet came online and people started delivering a lot of things digitally and online shopping started to happen a lot more, Australia Post the year after that, after it peaked, had their most successful year ever in delivering stuff door to door, and delivering actually hard copy stuff and delivering material stuff rather than digitally, because it was so much digital was happening that it became cool, became hip together again to actually deliver something concrete, something tangible. So things go in cycles, and I often talk about the fact that even when it's something so value and of meaning, which can lose value and meaning, when we start to do things by rote and we do it ritualistically without any thought or intent, it loses the value, it loses the power. We've got a debate going on at the moment with like welcome to country. Like if you're doing it all the time, the actual power of it gets lost. And that can be with anything we do in life. So in your business, if you're just doing the same as everyone else, you get lost in that noise. And so what's something that you can do that's different, that actually makes you stand out? And when you follow people around a shopping centre, they don't say, oh, that's better, that's better. They say, oh, that's different, that's different. People notice things that are different or unique. So differentiation is such an important thing for your business. And it can just be something small, but it's got value and you do it and other people don't. And building trust and loyalty through consistent delivery. And that's just like anything in life, when you turn up consistently, whether it's for your family or your sports team or your business, people feel good about you. They know they can trust you. You build loyalty. That's just a given.
Yep.
So we did a couple of exercises, and I just was now taking the opportunity to sort of just reflect on what you have done on your brand. And so just wanted to throw it out there. We talked about mission. We did that exercise where we talked about what do we say we deliver and what sort of outcomes we're promising. So let's start with that, and then we'll talk about the values. So did anyone do a little bit more work on sort of what's a good succinct purpose or mission statement about what you're delivering to your clientele? Maybe start with yourself, David.
I didn't end up digging much deeper on the mission stuff, to be honest. I haven't been able to put a whole lot of time into this. I do have all my core values and everything like that, which sort of guide what we do. I just got to piece it all together.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. You've already, because you've done quite a bit of sort of engineering work on the brand.
Yeah.
we talked about, I think, trying to sort of construct down to values between 3 and 5, I think it was, because it's too many. So, what are your values? You got about 5 or 6.
Yeah, I had there was 7 of them there, but I think
Yeah,
there's a few that are pretty similar.
yeah,
Like you said, when you can bundle a lot of them. So the first 3, honesty, integrity, and trust, are probably in the same vein. And then you've
yes.
got growth, kindness, wisdom, and curiosity. Um, so yeah, you'd probably do something like the integrity, growth, and curiosity, I reckon, would be
I like curiosity.
the 3, because
Mm,
curiosity sort of opens it up to learning things that you don't already know, and that's a big part of what we do. And growth
yeah.
is obviously, again, around knowledge, but also growth in property, growth in your lifestyle, and then integrity for me is the highest thing that I hold
Mm,
for myself. So
The curiosity is an interesting one, given you're creating quite personal relationships with a lot of your clients and you're seeking to understand them. So being curious around, the reasoning and the deeper understanding of why they're moving and where they're wanting to go and what they're looking for in a house. That
yep,
I quite like that. I think it just, again, it ties in, and Martin's talked so much about alignment, and
mm-hmm.
you're aligning. You know, I suspect when we go back and have a look at, the mission, the work we did around mission and vision and positioning, that will come out in um, and resonate throughout each of those components, which is what you want to see. And you, Martin, my reflection on it, whenever I'm doing this, when I get to the end of sessions, and you do 3 or 4 with clients to get clear around mission, vision, values, and positioning, you often see the same words coming through each of those processes, and you don't necessarily choose the same word in each part, but you see similarity and you go, yeah, I know this is, I know we've got this nailed, and we're going down the right path, because it's a consistent theme that comes
yeah.
through each part, slightly worded differently. It's constructed, each of them are constructed differently, but that messaging is consistent.
Exactly. And what tends to happen is the same sentiments start coming out as you sort of start to unpack, because we're all personalities and we all have key core drivers as business people. And that comes out. And the more that you tap into that and kind of, start to work with it. And it can just be a word. I think, like a reference, like Optus, the word is yes, and you can probably imagine or visualize those initial workshops or brainstorming that was done at Optus, where someone sort of just, they were talking about, I want to just have this attitude that we can do this positive attitude. Da, da. What about we just have the word yes? We say yes to stuff instead of, always saying no and justifying why we can't do stuff. And you can almost imagine how they got to that word yes, or Commonwealth back can, I think was the other example. And we did recently with one of Tim's clients was the word exceptional came out. And it came out in different ways and in different words, like Oscar says. But then that becomes almost the underpinning attribute. And then the tagline became exceptional living. And they were talking about delivering an exceptional product. So, and the word premium came out, and that aligns with exceptional and things like that. And I love curious, because we just talked about differentiation. And how many businesses do you see that they have a value? One of their core values will be curiosity or curious. Very few, right? And that straight away makes people curious. They want to look under the hood. They want to see, what the hell do you mean by curious? That's not something you often see a business person say. So the first thing you're going to want to do is find out what you mean by that. And then that word represents so much. It's saying to me that you're not standing on, what you know. You're inquisitive. You're looking to learn. You have a passion for life. You want to explore. And that one word, that one value creates that whole perception, right? So I think all business is about growth, but I think you could probably still have that as a value, but there might be another one in there. But see, even if we just helped you, David, condense those sort of seven sort of things that are floating there, many of which are similar, into really three strong pillars, that
Yep.
will will make it so much easier for you moving forward.
Mm.
Uh,
Yep.
so, Sam, over to you. Did you do, and I guess we can probably cover both, did you have any more thoughts around the mission, the values?
Look, yeah, so for the mission, like we worked on this a couple of sessions ago, so it's still sort of a work in progress, but it's sort of getting there, and it's obviously going to depend on the branding that we go with and all that sort of thing. Mike and I did look at some pillars. I guess some of them considered values, some not so much values, and then put some wording behind what they mean to us as a company. Um, but yeah, I've got it on my other monitor here, so excuse me if I look a bit cockeyed.
Yeah.
But yeah, mission statement is property development strategists, project marketers, and sales specialists. We partner with developers and landowners to maximize project success and minimize risks at every stage of the property development lifecycle. Everything we do is underpinned by data-backed strategy, proven experience, and deep industry connections. So those three things are really core to us. The data-backed sort of analysis, our proven experience, as well as the deep industry connections. So that's sort of the overall mission statement. I wasn't sure if we are going for more of a
Yeah.
tagline,
No,
but that covers
that's
off
more your
everything.
that's more your positioning that's more your positioning statement. One of the things that popped up maybe for Steve and I when we were reflecting and is we've got a little worksheet because it can be quite hard to, we're talking mission, values, vision, positioning. Um, some of the words that Martin got you to do in that workshop, I might send through a little worksheet to get you thinking a little bit more about those. What is it that you do for your clients? What is the outcome? And we exist to do this for clients, and we define our clients through this. There's a little worksheet that takes you a couple of steps. So I might send that through during after this session when we send through the video as well. Just gives you a little way to structure and take bits from your position and your values and your and that word cloud exercise that Martin took you through gives you a little bit more structure step by step to pull that together. Um,
Look, that sounds good. Like, I mean, put simply, I guess we, maximize project success.
yeah,
That's the key of what we do. Look, we do have sort of the four pillars that, are
yep.
kind of important to us. The four
What are they?
being integrity,
Yep.
conviction, collaboration, and transparency.
Yep.
And I wrote it, we sort of wrote a bit down of what they mean to us. So, like, integrity is the core of everything we do, as doing right by our clients and other stakeholders is vital in maintaining our reputation and reaching positive outcomes for all. Conviction is key to minimizing downside risks and maximizing outcomes, as well as eliminating subpar opportunities or strategies. With data-driven analysis and intelligent market research, we ensure we deliver with conviction. Collaboration, important component to being able to maximize the success for our stakeholders is through collaboration, whether that be with our building partners, investor partners, or our land owner developer clients. We partner with you to ensure the best possible outcomes and overall experience. And then lastly, transparency. Clear and transparent communication can make a massive impact and mean the difference between a successful and unsuccessful business transaction, and is one of the main areas that is overlooked in the industry. It is a main contributor to someone's experience, reduces unnecessary stress and confusion, and helps maintain and strengthen the company's reputation.
Yep.
So yeah, that's sort of a bit of wording. I mean, it's it's all a
Yeah.
bit rough and there's room for improvement. But yeah, that's sort of what sort of came to mind when Mike and I sort of met last.
Excellent. So, without sort of digging too deep or, obviously starting any sort of work with you now as such, but a little bit like David, where I think there's probably some core terms that are quite similar, a little bit like, so what was the first one? Just
So we
quickly.
got integrity, conviction,
Yeah, integrity,
collaboration,
conviction,
transparency.
integrity, conviction, collaboration, and transparency. So I think integrity and conviction can definitely come together because you should have had a certain conviction around being integral people. And even, and maybe as you were saying it, I was thinking like, I love conviction as a word, as a pillar,
Yeah.
because again, a little bit like curiosity, it's different. And it says so much about you as people. We do things with heart and soul and mind. There's a real conviction behind it. There's a real commitment. There's a real, it's a very energy word as well, conviction. Collaboration I love too, that sense of partnership, and we're working with you in that sense of, it's not just us doing something and we're very attentive and we listen, all that sort of stuff. Well, there's a lot of really good sentiments around collaboration. I really like that too.
And then transparency, last one.
And you talked about clarity, clarifying and being clear and transparency. Maybe that's, a clarity word. Your three pillars could be clarity, conviction, and collaboration. And you pull all the good sentiments into those.
Yeah, no, I can certainly see how that can work.
And then it becomes really easy for people to remember. And all those sentiments that you talk about with all those other things can fit into one of those things. Because you can also build in how you deliver things through the word clarity. We always, you can build good communication into clarity because, how you can be accessible and all those sorts of things. So, there's, just as you said, it sort of all lined up for me pretty quickly.
Just while you're on that one, guys, I did a quick check for a one-word substitute for integrity and conviction, and it came up with principles or principled. So
there you go. Yeah, so that very much integrity and conviction, same thing, and you can definitely pull that in. And transparency even a little bit. So you kind of got three there, pillars that it really could be wrapped into one. But I think the way you've actually articulated transparency in terms of clarity or clarification and being clear, I think it was one of the things.
The clear communication, and transparent communication.
Yeah, so that could be clarity. That could be like or something that like that.
Oh, definitely.
You could end up with nice 3 C's, easy for people to remember too. There's your 3 pillars.
That's
but
true.
I'll send you my invoice later. All right.
Cheers, Martin.
And so lastly, any thoughts around, we did a little bit of workshopping on the imagery. What sort of images, illustrations, photography would best present our message out there? And I gave examples like, I think I gave the example of Dank's furniture where the dad's just sleeping on the couch and the baby's asleep on top of him and the comfort of home is the message, and that sort of image conveys so much. It basically says you're just going to collapse into our beautiful sofas. They're so well designed and drift off into happy land, right? The comfort of home. So any thoughts around the kinds of imagery that would best represent your service?
I don't think we haven't looked too deep into it. But I've got a couple of notes. Yeah, obviously because I guess we're in the orphan stage of looking at sort of new branding and everything. So there's it's all going to depend on sort of how everything aligns and whatnot. But like for example, one piece of imagery would be like a bar chart uptrend or some sort of graph or visual visual data, just to highlight the sort of data analysis, how everything's backed by that data backed decisions. Property, because, developing residential land, obviously the outcome there is it's all within the property industry. A connection graphic. So you often see those little infographics. I think it's even like something like Facebook sort of thing. You have all the little connection because that's part of what we do is sort of having that sort of industry-wide network.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about collaboration, like a partner sort of handshake, rural land, sort of showing from the get-go, because a lot of the time, the land sort of starts off as rural land before it gets the necessary zoning and gets subdivided. So that could be sort of like a meeting on a parcel of land. Different land estate plans. So, you always have a master plan of the overall subdivision. And then some community-minded stuff. So, some finished parks, some nice streetscaping, some families, enjoying the subdivision and the community that it creates. So that sort of thriving community sort of element. But yeah, that's sort of what I noted in the previous.
Yeah,
There's definitely a lot you can run with.
Yeah, excellent. Some really good visual associations there, actually. I tend to lean more to, again, we talk about authenticity of images, which is why, some stock imagery can work, particularly close up where it doesn't look obvious stock, but otherwise having your own library of authentic images that you can use across all of your media, background shots on your website, in your capability statement, in your whatever, right? For socials, for a relatively small investment, you can get really good photographs that are yours forever, and no one's going to show up at the same ones. And it really does authenticate your business. And one of the ones is, rather than the sort of cliche handshakes, where everyone's smiling at each other, these sort of obvious stock ones where, they look so staged. And the more sort of candid ones where you're not, you and you just see maybe your name slightly on the back of on a polo or something like that, with a client on a parcel of land, just looking out at it, but not looking at camera. Someone gets the shot while you're not even thinking they're taking the shot. Those sorts of shots, which
Sure.
Which are more authentic and are more powerful as metaphors and statements than a sort of handshake with people smiling at each other. So those are the sorts of shots that would really work for you.
Yeah, no, they all sound good. I'm also a big fan of the natural, non-posed sort of non-stock images. Like I think that's important to highlight that sort of authenticity and that differentiation.
Excellent. And what about yourself, David? Any thoughts on imagery? You probably worked quite a bit with it already, yes?
Actually did a photo shoot this morning.
There you go.
Off the back of what we were talking about.
You got the dog running in the house?
No, I didn't. It was in an apartment, but it was just mainly around interaction with the customer and just creating that personal experience and I guess comfort zone for them to open up. That was the sort of messaging I was trying to get across. So the positioning of the seating, like I made sure that we're on a right angle to each other where you're sort of talking through things. So you're working together rather than across the table and, mindful of what was in the background. So that's why we went and we're in quite a nice apartment to have the backdrop, and then had stuff with the computer and just showing around mapping tools and the knowledge side of it. Just there was quite a number of different things like handshake and sort of that personal approach, and then we did some visual like video and photo stuff for reels and things as well. So I think it'll come together right.
Excellent. Get some good assets there that you can use across a range of media.
Yep.
Good stuff. All right. Well, thanks for your sharing. Do you sort of feel like there's a little bit more work to do? I mean, back to Sam and Mike, I suppose just one thing you mentioned a couple of times, Sam, that that a lot of this sort of stuff would be bedded down as you sort of look to kind of design the brand, right? And so my message would be the design is kind of, I mean, I'm not flippantly saying it's easy, but it becomes so much easier once the real definition work is done. And sometimes people will naturally leap to let's get some stuff designed, logos and all these sorts of things, and then we can sort of start on the other stuff. It's actually the other way around. When you get really clear on the vision, values, mission stuff, and that's solid, then your design follows that nicely, and you'll create a design, um, footprint platform like that mirrors that is aligned with the definition, and the profile work you do.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can, see why that's sort of important. I think it's more so the word that we go for, and I guess you can make those sort of tweaks once you sort of choose, the right brand and the wording. It's just because we want it all obviously to align and everything, but yeah, there's certainly a bit more work we can do on sort of mission statement and those pillars and everything, just to,
Yeah.
and as well as the matrix, just to make
Mm.
sure it's sort of as good as we can make it before we take those next steps.
Yeah, I think the thing to remember is you're all early on this journey in terms of, we've done a lot of work around your mission, values, vision, positioning. And sometimes it requires you, once you get through that, is to pull it all together and then, you let it marinate over a period of time and things start to sort of fall out from that. Or you're sitting down with someone like a Martin and go, well, this is what we put together as a first cut. And there's a little bit more curiosity, right, that comes in when you're sitting with someone like a Martin to just delve into some of those words and into some of those statements a little bit more to really, go from what's quite, a broad, big cloud into this really targeted, focused, right, we've nailed it. So just be conscious of that you don't have to get it perfect now, but you're on that first step of the journey and you've got a lot of clarity already. And you're on your way especially for Sam and Mike, as you look to exit Harcourts and build your own business. That's something over the next sort of 3 or 4 months is going to become really clear the more that you sit down and talk. And sitting down with someone like a Martin to flesh some of that stuff out, knowing where you want to go is a really useful exercise. So, yeah, lots of good work done, but it's one of those things that even when you get there, you go, do we need to refine it a bit further? Especially early days. If I look at Sam, Mike, and Dave, who are in here, Dave, you sort of 9 months, 10 months into business. Sam and Mike, you've been in business a lot longer, but you're now going to venture out on your own. So the brand itself is still young. And as you get out, test the market, refine how and what you deliver, there'll be a further refinement. A business that's 15, 20 years old, that refinement is still happening, but it's perhaps more nuanced. Whereas I think for the three of you, it's going to be quite a consistent evolving thing to strengthen. Would you agree with that, Martin?
Yeah, and look, I'd probably add to that and say it's obviously evident you guys aren't 22 years old. You've been in business, you've run teams, you're pretty savvy business people. You've been working at Harcourts, you see how they operate, you know what a good brand is and all that sort of stuff. The danger a little bit is when you kind of, it's a little like, when you know a bit, right? Or you know quite a bit. And, you're not just discovering stuff, and you're not someone who sort of doesn't know some of this stuff. And the danger can be the thing, oh, look, I've probably got the tools. We could probably do this ourselves, right? We could probably nail this. And I could tell you now without a hesitation that the work that you will do with someone like myself, who's really, really good at this stuff, will be way far more than you can achieve yourself when you're slugging it out together in a room or tweaking it. And what I find happens so often when people are, because it's your business and you know it, right? And you also know the process of it to get there because we've helped you with that. And what I typically find is that it's not quite there, and then they change it a little bit, and then it gets sort of incrementally changed through the next 6 months, year, 2 years. So with a really seasoned operator, like you can see, I can pull stuff together, right? You provide some really cool ingredients, but because I work in this space and I've been doing it for 25 years, I have got the trained eye, and I can quickly go to the source and get what you're trying to say, but deliver it in a way that's usually much more succinct and understanding the less is more principle, because we always fall into the trap as business people of over sort of, sharing what we do. And the power of metaphor, is usually a lot stronger than all the information. So I just put it out there because I think I made the offer at the workshop. I'd be more than happy to come and see either of you or both of you, both your businesses, and just have a little chat and just to sort of have an hour together, no charge, free of charge, to see whether and where you'd probably get doing it yourselves and where you'd get quicker maybe doing with myself if that made sense. But certainly to offer to have that initial hour to see if you would get value and you would get a better result and you'd get it much quicker. So I just put that out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we'll probably take you up on that, Martin. Yeah, like I think both Sam and I realize like you can be too close to something and in terms of hitting those key messages and yeah, definitely value experience that you've got and others in this in this space. So yeah, like we can obviously go through the process of the mission statements and the values and getting clear on our positioning and everything that might inform the branding. But yeah, we'll totally take you up on that. I think we do need like a month or two of that sort of like marinating that Oscar was talking about, just in terms of like further just refining our mission and values and stuff, and then I reckon we'll get a lot of value out of bouncing that around. It'll also be closer to the time we're going to do it, so yeah, we'll take you up on that in 6 to 8 weeks, I'd say.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. And just what Oscar said, just to reaffirm, don't think you've got to get the finished statements.
Yeah.
Because again, one of the things that someone in my position is really good at is the wordsmithing and the crafting of that. So that as long as it's kind of like the work is done in unpacking and getting to kind of the source of the things you want to say, like all the ingredients are on the table almost.
Yeah.
But don't worry about them being perfectly cooked.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Sounds
What-
good.
One of the things I've said to clients over the years is stick to your day job, and you're really good at what you're doing.
Yeah.
And one of the Martin's, I've been using branding guys everywhere over the years because I realised that whilst I can help clients write mission statements and do all that sort of stuff and do the positioning work and all the rest of it, someone like Martin brings the je ne sais quoi that we just don't have. I mean, he shifts you from a point of view about stuff to a viewing point, and I think that's really quite important. He did show one example of a client of mine in the presentation on the workshop, and that was Timeless Home Designs, and he did a magnificent job for that, and so quickly, in the sense of getting the creative ideas going, and it was really very, very valuable. But basically, stick to your day job, boys, and let someone else do the other bit.
Sounds good.
Anything else?
Not from my side, unless there's you mean for your
Just for the boys, if there's
boys,
anything
yeah.
that's popped up for them.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Yep.
Nothing from me. No, that's all very clear. I mean, less is more. That's all I keep referring back to.
Yeah. All
No,
right.
it's been good just to I guess be conscious that everything you do. I know Martin mentioned early on. It's not what you think of the brand; it's what people think of it or what they think of your business, and it's about almost helicopter viewing and sort of jumping on the other side of the fence and going, if I do this, say that, put that post up, use that language, whatever it is, how is it going to be perceived, and is it in line with what we're saying we're going to deliver? Because otherwise, if you got a disconnect, then all of a sudden you don't get that buy-in. So it's just for that the consciousness of that on a daily basis of everything that we do. So, and then bringing also the new starter on board and getting him to be on the same page as that. So when he's delivering, I guess, talking to potential clients or delivering things to internal and external stakeholders, at least we're aligned and it's delivering what we say. That's probably, I guess, the most important thing I've picked up the last couple of weeks.
Yeah,
that's really good. And you know, obviously we're a small business, and sometimes when you use examples of the big successful brands, they go, oh yeah, but they're them and they're global and whatever. But the same processes and the same thinking applies. And they were once nothing. They were once an idea in someone's head. Every big business on the planet was once just an idea in someone's head. And they become that because they gradually get better and better at doing it. And I mean, you think of the army of brand curators that they would have around Apple, or something. No, nothing would ever go out by chance. And there'd be someone that would be, there'd be, doing proofreading and, is it everything right with spacing, and is that image correct, and does it support the brand? And, nothing happens by chance. Now, we don't have those. We're not a big business. We're an army of curators. But if you can bring that thinking in to not just haphazardly throwing something out there and have and mindfulness about, does this kind of meet those thresholds that we've kind of put in? Does this align? And if that's before you just throw stuff out there, then you'll be well ahead of most of your competitors who just aren't that intentional or conscious. And most small business people, they're not as savvy about this sort of stuff. And it'll get you moving a lot quicker. And it'll get that recognition happening a lot quicker and that familiarity. And that will build the brand equity. It does over time. And so just on that, to respond to that one as a last thought.
Yeah. All right, peeps. Our next module is on the, here we go, 16th of September, 1 till 5. We're going to be doing some work around managing client relationships. So this is very much about a great follow-on from, we've set expectations throughout our various conversations and communications, whether it be warming up opportunities, sitting in front of opportunities, and now it's time to deliver on those promises made, so that we continue to strengthen our individual brand equity and value. And so we're going to be talking to you about the different stages in managing client relationships and the key things that need to happen to build raving fans around your brand. Okay.
See you then.
Sweet. I'll get Martin and Steve to hang around for that. But yeah, if there's nothing else, then off we go, and we'll see you on the 16th, gents.
Sounds good. Thanks for the session.
Fellas.